Thanks for watching Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking about Egypt's pivotal role in Africa. Ever since the president assumed office, he's established a new era in strengthening unity and cooperation between the different African countries, declaring that Egypt is going to continue to endeavor side by side with the African continent and the African countries in order to achieve sustainable development in the different domains, and also boosting the joint efforts in order to find solutions to the challenges that the continent has suffered from. As part of Egypt's keenness on intensifying coordination with its African fellows, the president has embarked on a three-leg African tour, taking him to Angola, Zambia, and Mozambique, and aiming to bolster this sense of exchange of cooperation with those countries, and also in the economic, trade, and investment domains. Also in the African tour, the president takes part in the 22nd COMESA Summit of heads of state and governments, and this is the largest market for trade and investment, offering a timely opportunity for the region in order to see apart and to show unity and solidarity in the face of the different challenges ahead. Tonight we have all the honor and pleasure of having with us Professor Dr. Ibrahim Hagazy, Professor of Marketing at the AUC. And with His Excellency Dr. Ibrahim, we are going to talk about how throughout the years and until today, Egypt actually has placed a priority our strong relations with Africa and also opening new opportunities and new windows of cooperation with the African countries. Dr. Hagazy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Taghreed, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, sir. The pleasure is mine. Let's first find out through this report the important highlights of the head of state, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's visit and African leg tour that takes him to the three African countries, and we'll be back.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arrived Tuesday in Luanda, which is the first by an Egyptian president to the country, as the first stop in the president's three-leg African tour, including Angola, Zambia and Mozambique, to strengthen relations with the African countries as well as push economic integration on the continental level. Angolan President João Lourenço asserted the importance of enhancing Egyptian-Angolan relations, stressing that his talks with President al-Sisi tackled means of boosting bilateral ties in various domains, especially in the fields of agriculture, tourism, pharmaceuticals, information security and defense. Spokesperson for the presidency stated that the Angolan president welcomed President al-Sisi's visit to Angola as part of his African tour, expressing Angola's pride in the first visit of an Egyptian president, appreciating the active role of President al-Sisi in addressing African issues, especially within the framework of efforts to advance development and maintain peace and security in the continent. The Angolan president affirmed his country's aspirations to work with Egypt to confront many challenges facing the continent, which requires concentrated African efforts to confront them through activating the mechanisms of joint African action, especially at the level of the African Union. The Angolan president pointed to the depth of the historical and extended relations between the two sides at various levels, stressing the need to work in this regard to develop various frameworks for joint cooperation, especially on the economic and trade aspects, as well as benefiting from the Egyptian capabilities and its broad expertise and successful experiences in many fields. These include infrastructure development, construction of new cities, pharmaceutical manufacturing, construction of bridge and road projects, and tourism. A spokesman for the presidency stated that President al-Sisi expressed happiness at visiting Angola for the first time, stressing the importance that Egypt attaches to maximizing coordination and consultation with the Angolan side regarding ways to strengthen joint African action mechanisms, whether institutional, political or developmental, in a way that contributes to achieving a growth and stability that African countries aspire to. President al-Sisi also expressed Egypt's pride in the brotherly relations it has with Angola in its various dimensions, especially with regard to Egypt's role in supporting development efforts in Angola by providing technical support and capacity building programs to prepare Angolan cadres, praising in particular the pace of economic growth that Angola is witnessing. President El-Sisi asserted Egypt's interest in increasing the volume of trade, exchange and investment between the two countries and strengthening the role of the Egyptian business sector in the Angolan market in various fields during the coming period. A spokesman for the presidency stated that the talks also touched on a number of regional files of issues and common concern. The talks also dealt with the Ethiopian dam, where the importance of reaching a binding legal agreement regarding the filling and operating of the dam was emphasized in line with the rules of international law, taking into account the concerns of the concerned parties. At the conclusion of the talks, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and his Angolan counterpart, João Lourenço, attended a ceremony for signing a number of agreements and protocols between the two countries in the fields of exchanging information and security, cooperation, water resources, clean energy and electricity. This was followed by a joint press conference between the two sides. Then President El-Sisi left the Angolan capital, Luanda, heading to the second leg of his African tour, Zambia, to take part in the 22nd Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Summit of Heads of State and Governments.
Dr. Hagazy, a very important African tour, a three-leg African tour, taking His Excellency the President to Angola, Zambia and Mozambique. The choice of the three countries and the timing, very significant.
I have to admit that this was a very good move from our President, Fattah el-Sisi, His Excellency. Reason being in that when you look at the continent, the African continent, he picked up the belt and the lower belt of the African continent. Bear in mind that South Africa, which is one of the major countries in Africa, is not part of the COMESA. So eventually, when you look at the resources of the other two countries, which is Angola and Mozambique, aside from Zambia, because Zambia hosts the 22nd COMESA conference, Angola is a major producer of oil. And of course, we need to collaborate in terms of our technical assistance, because we have a very good large potential of collaboration and coordination with Angola in that domain, plus tourism as well, because the theme of the 22nd conference, part of it is green tourism.
Yes.
So that's number one. But on the other side, if you look at Angola, which is on the west side, and then in the middle you have Zambia, and then on the east side you have Mozambique. Mozambique is a major producer of natural gas. So I think, I'm not sure, but I think when you look at politically why he picked up these particular two other countries aside from Zambia, obviously there is a long-term vision of the president for collaboration in these domains, because definitely we need oil. That's number one. And
yes.
Secondly, Angola needs a lot of development in its economic program. Plus, of course, as it was said today, that he is the first Egyptian president to visit a country like Angola, which is, I'm sure it is highly respected by the government of Angola.
Yes, definitely.
So definitely the timing, not just for the conference, but for picking up these two in particular, which are in the vicinity east and west of Zambia, I think it's a very right move at that time.
Yes, a very right move at that time, and a very significant choice also. His Excellency will be participating in the COMESA summit in Zambia, arrived earlier in the day, and later on he will be visiting Maputo, the capital of Mozambique. So, as we can see, an extension of the Egyptian role in Africa,
yes.
And we are building on what we has achieved since Egypt's chairmanship of the African Union.
Allow me to give a brief, because I'm sure many of our viewers are not really aware of course, we know what the common area of Eastern and South Africa, that's the name, the abbreviation of COMESA. But let me shed some lights about some statistics which are of value for us as Egyptians, and at least it will support why the president have taken, or at least during his presidency of 1 year, has done a lot of things. Number one. Second, these statistics will show that we have a major role to play in Africa, not just because we want, because this is our destiny, especially when you look at the blocks that we have now, whether the US bloc or the EU bloc, or you have now Russia and China is another bloc. So we need to build our bloc ourselves. And since we are part of Africa as continent, then we have to unify this bloc, because if we unify that bloc, then our word could be said and could be heard by other countries. First of all, COMESA was established in 1994. So by next year, it will be almost 30 years.
Yeah.
That's number one. Second, it is composed of 21 countries from Africa, 3 of which are Arab countries, which are Sudan, Egypt, and Libya. The rest of them are major African countries, with the exception, of course, of South Africa, but they have a reason not to join. The capital of the COMESA is actually based upon the GNP of countries. And when you look at the 21 countries, Egypt is the largest GNP, regardless. Egypt is the largest, which means that you are the major contributors of the COMESA capital.
Capital, yes.
And also, in every year, we provide our financial assistance to the COMESA, which is actually headquartered in Zambia.
Yeah.
So, for instance, as the statistic says, the last statistic about Egypt contribution back in 2020, it was 6.8 million, which is the largest. The second one was Kenya, of 2.8 million. So you can see the major difference that we contribute just before even we take our role as a presidency of COMESA.
Yeah.
The blocks.
Yes.
Let's look at the blocks. How much is the trade? The trade statistic of the bloc in combined 21 countries, it is 19.8 billion US dollars. You imagine the
Yes.
trade, how is it? Not the intra, but from these countries to the entire world. And then the top 5 partners in trade. Guess who is number 1? Egypt is number 1, followed by Sudan, Kenya, Zambia, and Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So here we are a major trade partners, not just member of. In terms of their exports and imports, the major imports, which I think what we rely on, are basically in agricultural products and in textile. And their major imports, the things that we can help on, such as chemicals, transportations, and we are now a major producer of transportation means, and machinery. In addition to that, let's look at how the process of export-import in the COMESA. It's very important, these statistics. That's why I want to highlight it for us as Egyptians.
Thank you for bringing this valuable information.
The total exports, COMESA total exports is $156 billion. That's the total exports. The total imports of the COMESA group is 227 billion US dollars. These are big numbers. Within, as a group, because one of the major missions of the COMESA is promoting regional integrations, promoting free trade, intra-trade among members of the COMESA.
Yeah.
COMESA intra exports is 12 billion US dollars per year. 12 billion US dollars. COMESA intra imports, it's 11.16 billion US dollars.
Yes.
So that's a major number. What's the population of the total group? It's 616 million individuals. That's a big market, aside from South Africa.
Yes.
And the GDP of the total group is 966 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars.
Yeah, thank you
see
for,
the block?
for
Now,
the
for
block's
Egypt,
information. Yeah.
allow me to mention Egypt.
Yeah.
Now, Egypt, as members, it is the largest GDP in the group, which is $444 billion. Egypt is the second largest population after Ethiopia. We're 104, Ethiopia is 118. Egypt is the 5th largest area in terms of after Congo, Sudan, Libya, and Ethiopia. Egypt is the largest exporter to the group of 40 in the group of 40 billion. Egypt is the largest imports, 73 billion. Egypt is the largest intra-COMESA exporter of $2.8 billion for the group. And Egypt is the 5th largest intra-COMESA importer of 900 million.
Very valuable and
With these
important
statistics,
information. We'll go to prayer time, short break, and we'll be back. we're still discussing and knowing more from Professor Dr. Ibrahim Hagazy, Professor of Marketing at AUC, our very distinctive guest, more about COMESA and the important leg of the African tour that His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is currently right now actually visiting Zambia and will be attending tomorrow the COMESA meetings. Exactly. Yes, Doctor. We were talking about the valuable information.
I was talking about that when you look at these statistics, and these are facts of 2021 as the latest statistics from COMESA, you can see that why Egypt is giving a lot of value and importance to the COMESA bloc. I call it the bloc or group. Because as I said, you're facing nowadays the challenges globally, especially with the Ukrainian-Russian war and the escalation of international prices. You need to have a bloc that can compete head-to-head, economically as well as politically. Because if you are scattered and individualized, you will not be able to play a role in the international arena. I think Egypt deserves to play the major role. Egypt, based on statistics and facts, is the largest member of the group, second largest, or maybe as large as South Africa.
Yes.
So the president has all rights to do what he did during his presidency, and we'll come to that point what Egypt did during the year where Egypt was head of the COMESA.
Let's take this point because it's actually a high priority point, actually, what Egypt did during its presidency, because actually what they are going to do is to build on the achievements that Egypt already took part and further promoted during its presidency.
First of all, we have to be aware that the 22nd conference in Zambia is the first face-to-face conference after COVID, which means that Egypt took over during the COVID period, and that's why you didn't see this kind of gathering similar to the one. Second, you have to know that the conference is hosting not just head of states, it's hosting 3,000 members of the 21 countries, simply because it is usually done on a 3-day basis. First one for the foreign affairs ministers to discuss about the agenda of
in preparation
of the third day, which is the presidency's
and heads of state
and head of state meeting.
Yeah.
In the middle, which was actually today, the 7th, it is about a forum. And we had the representative from Egypt presenting the issues of concern and how to put strategically plans for the COMESA group. So Egypt took over the head of the COMESA in a very difficult time. So what did we do? Actually, number one, we strengthened regional trade. Basically, we boosted investments, and we know many of the private sector companies are actually investing and operating in the COMESA area. Second, we supported infrastructure development, and I don't want to say about the dam that we are helping in one of the COMESA member groups. And then thirdly, we gave the technical assistance for agriculture and food security in member countries.
Yes.
Which is actually know that one of the UN Millennium Goals is the issue of fighting poverty. So in line, COMESA, with the UN development goals and Egypt presidency, we provided during that period of time a lot of technical assistance to how to improve agricultural productivity and food, and improve on food security in the members. Last but not the least, we have military groups who are participating with the United Nations in maintaining peace in some of these areas.
Yes.
Which is again part of promoting peace and stability, because without stability and peace in the region, you will not be able to have economic and regional integration.
Exactly.
So imagine this has been done during Egypt.
During COVID.
During COVID, and number one, and number two of Egypt. That's the role.
Yeah.
Regional trade, infrastructure development, whether in road, in highways, electricity, dams. In agricultural productivity, we assisted, technical assistance, sharing knowledge, and fourth and not the least is helping in the peace and stability of member countries.
Yes, definitely this is also considered to be among our priorities vis-a-vis our foreign policy, maintaining peace and security in the region and also among our African brothers, and was also among the priorities concerning giving a boost to the infrastructure projects, because without those there won't be any sort of the intra-trade projects that we're talking about.
Exactly.
So we have many achievements in light of this important opportunity to further integrate and further push forward with this integration in Africa. What are we expecting, Dr. Hagazy? What sort of messages does this 22nd Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa and the Heads of State meeting send to the world today? How would the participation provide further this sense of an opportunity to push forward for African integration, in your opinion?
Let me delve. I will answer your question, but in order to answer your question, let me talk about something that many Egyptians are not aware of, which is the African Continent Free Trade Area.
Yeah.
African Continent Free Trade Area is a free trade area agreement among 54 countries of the 55 countries in Africa. And like any other FTA or free trade area, is also promoting regional integration and the trade eliminating of barriers. So when you put the COMESA, which is also hosting the African Continent Free Trade Area or Free Trade Agreement, then you can see that this conference, which is the first face-to-face after COVID, they're going to work on 5 pillars. Pillar number 1 is try to increase the intra-Africa trade. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to combine the African Continent FTA with the COMESA. Yes. COMESA is a sub-part of, but it is joining on the conference. That's why it's a major conference, especially that Zambia is the one who actually have established the COMESA back in 1994. So they are very happy and very proud to take over from Egypt at that high level, as you can say, and build over it. Yeah. But in order to build over it, they have to include the bigger umbrella of Africa. So that's why we have to know that the COMESA this time is also including invitees from the African Continent Free Trade Area. So that's number 1. The second is how to promote industrialization in the COMESA. Now, I think Egypt can play also a major role. That's why the attendance of His Excellency the President will shed a lot of lights about how can we assist in building this or promoting industrialization. Thirdly, which is very important, we know that Africa is very rich in terms of natural resource. Whatever you want, tourism, natural resource, gas, natural oil,
many treasures,
many things, diamond, many things, gold. So promoting regional value chain is also part of the agenda of that coming conference. So imagine the value chain, the supply side is actually joining. So if you eliminate the barriers of infrastructure, which is still one of the challenging obstacles, then you can realize that we can have a stronger value chain among ourselves as members of the COMESA, which we can provide a quality product with a good price. Yeah. So that's number 3. Number 4 is how that bloc can compete against other blocks. And let me mention these other blocks.
Some other competitors.
Which are, yeah, exactly. You have the African companies are actually the AFTICA. So that's still a bloc because part of the COMESA is in the bloc, but there are other countries which are not. You have also the EU is another bloc. So among these blocks and the Asian group, which is a third bloc, if these blocks cannot find a group which is strong enough to compete with them, then the import of imports will be more than the export from the COMESA to other things. So that's part of how can they increase the COMESA competitiveness among other blocks. The other one, the last one, which is key, it will be, for sure it will be on the agenda, is boosting the investment, foreign direct investment in the COMESA region and members.
Yes, and this is also a very important
dimension. That gives why the 22nd conference is a major. The reason being, again, is when you look at the achievement of Egypt, where does it stand, and where the next president and the head of the COMESA would like to take it. So this is part of this tomorrow's agenda among the presidents.
Yeah, very important and a very rich agenda, as we have actually seen. The theme of this COMESA summit that has been jointly developed by Zambia and the COMESA Secretariat is mainly economic integration for a thriving COMESA that is anchored on 3 pillars. We can have green investment, value addition, and also tourism is there. So we can see the 3 pillars. Promoting green economy is very much trendy, Dr. Hagazy.
Who else
the
is
future.
Exactly, and who else is the leader in renewable energy, like solar energy, like wind energy? You know, I think Egypt also will play a major role in that part. The other one, which is you have to be aware of the issue of tourism and green tourism. First of all, you have Kenya, which has wildlife reserves. And then you have Zambia, which is the home of the majestic Victoria Falls. And then you have Egypt. And that's why, believe it or not, the COMESA have established a COMESA tourism agency so that it can promote the intra-country's tourism. And that's why I think one of the agenda of the Angola visit, President Sisi talked about tourism as well. So we can see that is also part of what we are going into as the theme of this 22nd conference.
Yes, let's explore the beauty and the tourism side, the beauty of Africa, and we'll be back. Important summit that is going to be attended by heads of states of the 21 member states of COMESA, and as we know that Zambia is expected to assume the rotating presidency and take over the chair of the COMESA authority from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We talked about Egypt's achievements in the COMESA. Egypt made great strides and achievements. The implementation of the Egyptian presidency of COMESA comprised enhancing regional supply chains, as Dr. Hagazy mentioned, among the member states, maximizing industrial integration, increasing investment in cross-border infrastructure, as well as connectivity programs and projects, and cooperation across whole Africa. Digital transformation today, Professor Hagazy, is also playing a very important role along with AI. It's the future, it's today's future. Is it?
I have to tell you a secret. By the way, part of my preparation today was done by AI.
By AI?
Yes.
By ChatGPT?
Yes.
Let it be. Yeah.
So, you know, if you have the technology, you should use it. You know, there is no doubt. And it helps a lot because it actually improved on your productivity.
Yes.
That's number one. Second, it's no longer a choice. And that's actually what I do at teaching, you know, trying to make sure that students, when they are graduating from the university, they have to be aware that the old-fashioned way of doing things is over. And definitely, with the advancement of technology, not just by artificial intelligence, but it's also the advancement of technology and the use of technology, definitely there will be a lot of replacement of employments. So opportunities will always prevail on the startup businesses, which looks at these issues. You know, most of the big companies today, globally, Fortune 500, among at least the 10 largest ones are all high tech. So this is no longer a choice. If you keep not browsing and not delving into technology, then definitely you will still be backward. You still be retarded. You still be lagging behind other countries. And that's why we have to look around us. Who is the major players here? It's not just the United States. It is India. It is China. Europe is actually lagging behind, unfortunately. So when you have these two are competing against each other, then where else? You know, the south part of the globe, which is Africa, and the northern side, which is Europe, they're lagging behind. So that's why you see the major economies are actually the United States, and on the other side is India and China. The reason being not just because they are large populations and large economies, because they are so advanced in the information technology and in AI. So that's why it goes without saying that we have to play a major role, and Egypt is, to a great extent, we are highly advanced, not in AI, but at least in using the digital technology.
Yes, definitely. A unique collaborative way of making use of the different advantages, actually, that had helped brand Egypt globally. Talking about branding Egypt globally, what does it take? It takes a lot. And we've been working hard, actually, in that sphere, sustainable development, requiring this sense of global awareness. Nile TV is part of the soft power tools
it should be
working in branding Egypt globally. So the COMESA and branding Egypt globally.
You touch a topic that is of my interest, and in many years I was talking to the Prime Minister, Sharif Ismail, God bless his soul, when I was member of the Parliament.
Yeah.
And I talked to them. I said, we know how to brand destinations, but we don't know how to brand a nation. So he looked at me and he said, well, is there a difference? I said, yeah, destination is tourism. So we know how to do it well, because we are the largest culture hub in the whole world. If we host 33% of the total, monuments and statues of civilizations, plus we are 7,000 years civilizations, much older than Greece and other countries. So we know how to do it. That's why, thanks God, alhamdulillah, these days we are witnessing good returns on our tourism. But we still have a problem in branding a nation like Egypt. So allow me to mention 5 things. If we want to brand a nation, globally, not a destination, of course globally.
Yeah.
Number 1, we have to brand exports. I.e., what are our major exports? What is our competitive advantage of exports? Which ones? We have to brand it, we have to highlight it, we have to stress it. And we have so many. We have so many, but we don't know which ones to actually brand globally.
Give us an identity and a special
Of
character.
course, when you say cars, automatically we say Germany. And when you say fashion, automatically you say Italy, and so on, But when you say Egypt, automatically you say the pyramids. That is not an export. All right? So that's number 1. The second, which we are good at, the second pillar of branding a nation is tourism. And we are doing a good job, and we have a strategy for 2030 to reach 30 million tourists, which is fine. I think let them do this. The third one, which I always give warning, because tourism is not products like statues, monuments. No, it's about a service. And a service is the behavior of the service provider. And in tourism, the service provider is any member of the Egyptian population, because they, in all different levels, they are the touch points with tourists, starting from landing to the airport, to the taxi cab, to the restaurants, to the bazaar area, and so on. So we have to know how to brand people.
Yes, they are ambassadors of their country.
Exactly.
Actually.
Egyptians.
Egyptians.
And we have a good image of being, welcoming people,
hospitable, and,
not hostile, kind, friendly.
Yes.
Why don't we know how to brand this? We have to give training, we have to give education for our kids, that the value of tourism and the value of Egypt itself, you are part of it. Another part is culture and heritage. Yes. So we have to differentiate between tourism and between our culture and heritage. So when you talk with tourists, why you come? Not to Egypt, to any country. First thing they tell you is not about the statues. It's about, I'm coming to visit the culture.
Yes, to experience
the norms and habits of behavior. Our norms and habits are so wonderful that it could be attractive. So that's another pillar. Another one is the foreign and domestic policy. And I think this will leave it to the president and the group of the ministers. And I think, from what I can see from the last 8 years, our president and the entire foreign policy group is doing a good job.
Great. Yes.
Last one, the issue of investment and immigration. Investment is your climate investment in Egypt have to be attractive. And then you can actually attract immigrants who are qualified. Not immigrants who comes as refugees. There is a big difference. Migration could be refugees, but it could be skilled people. Dubai is an attractive for immigrants, but who are skilled. Egypt has to play another important part of branding itself in terms of immigration.
Yes.
So these are the pillars, which are totally different than if you brand tourism.
Yes, very important pillars actually, and the Egyptian policy towards Africa has always been based on those several tracks, the most important of which is the path of development is actually improving the infrastructure, as we've talked, because this is considered to be very important if we are seeking projects and investments, expanding the entrepreneurial projects. And this is also another important track, entrepreneurship and the future of Africa, Dr. Hagazy.
Yes. Why entrepreneurs? Why Africa? That's a very important. So let me talk about 5 points. Again, you look at the statistics of the African population, which, as I mentioned, is one of the largest as a bloc. There is a growing middle class. So that's number one. And usually what drives any economy is not the upper class and the lower class. It is always the middle class, because it have the technocrats, those who know how to do things. And if you follow the management side of the 80-20 rules, that's a big formula that we always use it, that 80% actually is managed by the 20%, and the 20% are the one who lead the 80, not control them, lead them. And there is a difference between leading and controlling. So growing middle class, that's very important. You have abundant natural resources which need to be explored, so entrepreneurs. And I'm not just talking about startup business. Entrepreneur also is those who would like to invest as FDI in this country, regardless of their size, whether it's small or medium or large. The thirdly is the infrastructure developments. This part of the world needs a lot of development in the infrastructure. And that's one of the obstacles and barriers actually in the COMESA, which the new head of the COMESA have to really try to work on it. How can you improve the infrastructure so they can diminish the blocks of trade among member countries? That's another reason why Africa.
Yes.
Another one is, for any development you need skilled people. And the mean average age of the African population in the COMESA bloc is 19 years.
Yes, that's great. We have the youth as a
So you have the youth, and if you add to it the technological innovation that could be borrowed from member countries, then you have a good haven for entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs in Africa.
Yes, very important. You know, we have a great treasure here, and the youth are definitely the future. Yeah. And Egypt is investing in the youth, and this just did remind me of the Aswan Forum, the National Youth Forum in Aswan, the World Youth Forum. That was actually fascinating with the youth.
Exactly.
From
especially
all over parts of Africa were participating. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was also part of Egypt being the head of the COMESA.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of integration here.
Yes. A final message, Dr. Hagazy, because we are wrapping up, going to the top stories of the hour. Actually, this important meeting of the COMESA member states comes timely and comes while we are facing lots of economic challenges worldwide. Expectations out of this important meeting, what's next?
Expectation for Egypt. I would like to talk about expectation for Egypt. We have two issues of concern. Let me talk in terms of economical issues.
Of an expert, in the eyes of an expert,
I think the future of Egypt relies on two things: how you promote exports and increase our exports, and how you also promote import substitution, which means import substitutions. Most of our imports are actually raw materials and components. Who else more than Africa can help us in substituting our imports? Especially that there are no barriers, especially that we can go and invest, and then instead of borrowing from outside or importing from outside. That's one. Second, the issue of promoting export. Now, a lot of people think negatively about the devaluation of the currency, which is fine. I have nothing against this. However, let's look at the opportunities of devaluing a currency. Tourism is booming because of the devaluation, and also export could also boom. So, okay, so what are the markets that can accept our exports easily? Because there are no barriers of trade. It's the African, it's the COMESA members. So I think we expect a lot if we know how to focus, if we know how to manage the agenda that we have today with the global challenges. Forget about the global challenges. Egypt can manage itself because we have all it takes to come out of these challenges in a very positive way.
Thank you so much. We'll end it here in a positive way and all the positivity coming our way, inshallah. Thank you so much, Professor
My
Dr.
pleasure, Terry. Thank
Ibrahim Hagazy, Professor of Marketing at the AUC. We thank you for all the valuable information and input as always. Thank you, Dr. Hagazy.
It's my pleasure always.
Thank you.
Best of luck for you.
Thank you. And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. And that was the Daily Debate for tonight. And I'm Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.